Norman Smith is there. Wow, Norman, what does this mean?
This is potentially a massive blow to Theresa May's Brexit plans, because the Lord Chief Justice says he wasn't taking a position in terms of whether we should be in or outside the EU. Purely on a point of law, he rejected the government's argument that the government should trigger Article 50. In other words, it should be left to ministers to decide when we leave the EU. Instead, he backed the claimant's case, which was no, it should be Parliament that decides. Now that opens up a nightmare scenario for the government. Potentially, it means that Parliament could have to pass legislation to trigger Article 50. And if that was the case, the whole process could last for months and months and months, because it wouldn't just have to go through the Commons, it would have to go through the House of Lords too, where the government does not have a majority and where there are an overwhelming number of peers opposed to Brexit. On top of that, to add to the government's potential nightmare, is the possibility that MPs could seek to amend that legislation to bid in all sorts of conditions on Brexit. For example, they might insist that MPs should have another vote on Theresa May's negotiating strategy. Perhaps they might put in an amendment saying that we should remain a part of the single market. This has thrown one almighty spanner in the works for Theresa May. The one glimmer the government will hang on to is the possibility of going to the Supreme Court to appeal against this decision. But at the moment, I would think in Downing Street, they're holding their head in their hands thinking, what do we do now?
And on that, is it clear that they will have leave to appeal to the Supreme Court?
Oh yeah, this is such a huge constitutional issue. They will have automatic right to leapfrog the Court of Appeal and go straight to the Supreme Court. Here's one little quirk though. It is possible, though unlikely, that the final decision could be taken by the European Court of Justice. Now that would be an extraordinary scenario where our future in Europe was determined by the European Court. So I think no one is going to want to do that, although legally that would be possible. But I would imagine there will be an appeal unless the government decide, okay, let's just go for the vote quickly and see if we can do it on a simple, what's called substantive motion, a one-off vote in the House of Commons. It gets a little bit complicated, but the two scenarios that seem to me to be appearing before the government is, can they just hold a one-off substantive vote in the House of Commons as sufficient to show Parliament has been consulted, or, as the claimants argue, they have to introduce legislation. In other words, there has to be an Article 50 bill, which could take months and months and months, probably delayed triggering Article 50, maybe until, 2018, who knows, and also opening up the option of a whole load of difficult and awkward amendments being chucked in, making the process of Brexit much, much harder. So the key thing now is, could the government go for a quick vote, or are they going to get bogged down in legislation?
And when you say could they go for a quick vote, would it be that simple? How are MPs likely to respond, if and when they do get a vote?
No, here is the funny thing, Joanna. The vote is not the problem. I know that sounds a bit odd, but the reason is this. Most MPs will vote to trigger Article 50, because not to do so would be to spit in the face of the electorate. So even MPs who are committed Remainers, opposed to Brexit, even a large number of them would vote to trigger Article 50. The issue is the way that vote is held. If it is held as a short, sharp shock vote in the next few weeks or a couple of months, then the government will probably win it, and Theresa May can stick to a timetable of triggering Article 50 by the end of March. If, however, the judges rule that there has to be legislation, then the government will have to bring forward a bill to enact Article 50. Now, legislation takes months to get through Parliament. It is hugely convoluted, problematic. It is a gift to opponents. So the issue, as I say, is not the vote, but how the vote is going to be carried out, either as a short, sharp, substantive motion or a long, protracted, difficult, messy, painful piece of legislation.